Have you taken a road trip lately? What is a road trip anyway? Merriam-Webster's dictionary says that a road trip is just an extended trip in a motor vehicle. Welcome to English Coach 3Ts. I'm Tanya, and today I want to start out by giving you some hints on how you can get the most out of this video story lesson. So first, I'm going to tell you a story, and I recommend that you just listen to the story, try to enjoy it, try to see if you can understand most of it, but don't worry if you understand all of it. And for sure, don't worry if you understand every word, because at the end of the video, I'm going to give you a lesson with some of the words that might be a little bit tricky, and you're going to learn some new vocabulary and phrases. And then I'll give you some ideas on what you could do with that so that you'll have a better chance of remembering the new things you've learned. So for me, a road trip is when I get friends or family or both, and we all pile into a car with everything we need and sometimes even all of our food, and we hit the road. In our family, we love to take road trips and haven't done it as much recently since the pandemic. But when the girls were littler, we did it all the time. The story I'm going to share with you today has to do with all three girls, Tiana, Talia, and Trinity. But Trinity is really the star of this show. So when we would take a road trip, oftentimes we would be going to go somewhere to house sit, to help take care of a friend's house or their pets or their animals or their plants. And so we would take a lot of things with us. And that is why our car would be so packed. We could say it was packed to the gills. And on this particular road trip, because all three girls were going to come along, I knew that we had to set a limit on how many stuffed animals could come on the road trip. Because for little girls between the ages of like 7 and 12 or 13, stuffed animals seem to be one of the priority, one of the things they most like to bring with them when they're going somewhere. So I set a limit for one stuffed animal per girl. So we're getting everything put into the car. Like I said, it was stuffed to the gills. There was barely enough room for each of us to get in and sit where we were going to sit. And here comes Trinity carrying her backpack, very full. And I'm thinking to myself, I think I'm going to need to check on how many stuffed animals might be in that backpack. Let me go back just a little to help you understand why I thought there was probably more than one stuffed animal in her backpack. Trinity is the kind of kid who had a stuffed animal, and actually not just one, but two stuffed animals that she had to have with her all the time. And I knew that it was going to be difficult for her to decide between these two stuffed animals. And furthermore, these stuffed animals were big. They weren't little stuffed animals. One of them was kind of medium-sized and the other one was pretty big. And I knew it was going to be hard for her to decide between those two. So here she comes towards the car. She's carrying her backpack and she gets in the car with her backpack, and I ask her to open the backpack so that I can see inside and see how many stuffed animals she has. So she gets this little look on her face that right away gives me a clue that there might be more than one. And she unzips her backpack, she opens it up, and she pulls out a stuffed animal. And it's very small and not one of the two. So I was kind of confused about why she would choose that stuffed animal, but before I could finish thinking about that, she pulled out another stuffed animal. So I'm already thinking in my head, okay, she's got two stuffed animals. We clearly said one, but they're both really small, and I'm trying to think how I'm going to handle this, and the other two girls are kind of watching her and looking at me to see what I'm going to say because she broke the limit. And then she pulls out a third stuffed animal and it just keeps going. There's a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and a seventh, and this keeps going on like this until she has pulled out 12 stuffed animals. Okay, So in my mind, what's happening is, like I said, I understand why she was going to have a hard time deciding, but also there are some other things going on for me because our family loved to take road trips, like I told you. We, at the time, lived in Arizona, in the Phoenix, Arizona Valley, where it would get very, very hot in the summer, sometimes up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is about 38 or 48 or 49. I think it's 48 or 49 Celsius. Don't quote me on that, but it's very, very hot. Suffice it to say, it is very, very hot. And so we would take a road trip to escape the heat, but it wasn't always possible for all of us to go on a road trip. Technically, Trinity is my stepdaughter, which means that she's not related to me by blood. She is the daughter of my husband. And so I don't get to say everything that goes with her. My two daughters were homeschooled. So because they were homeschooled, we had a lot more freedom and flexibility on when we could go on a road trip. And Trinity went to traditional school, so she didn't always have that freedom. But she was also the youngest of the three, and so she would watch the other two girls go on these road trips and have a ton of fun. And I know this was something that was difficult for her. Additionally, when it was just Tiana and Talia, they could bring a lot more things. And they were even known to bring a typewriter. Yes, an actual typewriter, the old-fashioned kind. I know all typewriters are old-fashioned right now, but the really old ones, they had both saved up their money, and they would bring their typewriters and put them on their lap, and they would be in the back seat typing and playing and talking to each other and having a great time. So I knew why for Trinity, who was about 7 years old at this time, it would seem kind of odd that sometimes they could go and bring a typewriter, but why couldn't she bring more than one stuffed animal? So all this is going through my head while I'm watching her pull out the 12th stuffed animal and thinking, what am I going to say about this? They're all small stuffed animals, and I need to be fair because we've set a limit. And right about that time, she pulls out a huge phone book. Okay, this is not a phone book, but I brought this so that you could see. The phone book she pulled out was like this thick. I kid you not, this little 7-year-old is pulling a huge phone book out of her backpack. And I'm thinking, why is she bringing a phone book? And you might be thinking, why was she bringing a phone book? Okay, so like I already said, the girls love to play with the typewriter and the phone book also. They would play office. They would pretend like they were office workers, and it was a ton of fun for them. So I don't even remember, even at this time, this was like 2011-ish, the last time I had seen a phone book, because we rarely use phone books anymore. I'm curious, when is the last time you saw a phone book? And I'm also curious what phone books look like in your country. I know that sometimes things look really different in different countries, and I'm curious if they looked similar to the one that I showed you here in this video. For us, phone books were usually yellow or white and sometimes blue, and sometimes big like that and sometimes a lot smaller. So practice your English and write a description in the comments of what phone books looked like in your country. So what did I say? You know, to be honest with you, I don't even remember what I said. I can remember the part of her pulling the animals out of the backpack like it was yesterday. I can remember this whole part of the story very easily, but I can't remember what I said other than I remember we said she had to bring only one. One of my hardest life lessons as a parent was learning that if I said you had to bring one, even if later I realized, okay, it would be okay if they brought more, I need to stick to that limit most of the time. But why could I remember this part of the story and not that part of the story? This is the same reason we remember some vocabulary and not other vocabulary. One of the reasons that we remember things is because they are tied to or they are linked to an emotion or a strong memory of something that happened that was very emotional for us. So what I mean is, if we feel very happy or very sad, we're more likely to remember what happened there, along with all the other emotions that we can have. The stronger the emotion, the more likely we are to remember it. So this is a clue for you in a way that you can start practicing and remembering some of the vocabulary you're using. Try to think of a story that is a very happy memory. And even though we don't like to, you could think of something that was difficult, a time when you felt angry or a time when you felt very upset, and try to describe those times with English, and you'll have a good chance of remembering those vocabulary words. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the vocabulary that we talked about today in this video. So I've gone back and taken a look at this story and picked out some of the words I thought would be helpful for you. And I put them in all caps or all capital letters in the video as you were watching it so that you can find them easily. The first word I'd like to talk about is the word extended. It was used in the definition from Merriam-Webster's dictionary at the very beginning of the video. I said the dictionary says a road trip is an extended trip. So what we mean by extended in this case is a longer trip. Or you could use the word extended to mean longer than something. So for example, I took an extended nap. It was longer than the nap I might usually take. Also, towards the beginning of the video, I talked about my definition of road trips, and I mentioned that we pile into the car. And this is just a way to say we all get into the car, but we especially say pile into the car when there's either a lot of us or we have a lot of things that we're bringing. You could even use this similarly to say that we all piled onto the couch to watch a movie. It just means we all sat down on the couch to watch a movie. It's just emphasizing that there's a lot of us. After that, I said we hit the road. So obviously we don't literally hit the road, but we go on the road. So we like to say we hit the road when we're talking about getting out of town, getting away. And we can even use this phrase when we're not literally getting in the car and leaving. We can just say, I'm going to hit the road if I'm leaving. And maybe I'm getting in the car, maybe I'm walking, maybe I'm taking the bus. Either way, I'm hitting the road. I mentioned in the video that oftentimes we would go on road trips because we would be house sitting. House sitting is something that's common in the United States. When you're going on a long trip or an extended trip, you might get someone to come to your house and watch your house. So think of the word babysit. When you have somebody come and watch your child, if you're gone just for an hour or 2 or 5 or whatever, you have someone come and babysit your child. It's similar. You can have someone come house sit and watch your house. Maybe you have plants that need to be watered, or you have certain things that need to be done around the house while you're not there. Or maybe they are pet sitting. You have a pet, a dog, so you could say dog sitting or cat sitting, and they're going to watch your house, your dog, your cat, your plants, whatever it is. So you'll hear people say house sitting, pet sitting, dog sitting, cat sitting, things like this. If you'd like me to do a video talking more about house sitting, let me know in the comments. I said that we packed our car to the gills. This just means that we packed so much stuff in the car. We put so much stuff in the car, there wasn't room for anything else. And we can use this expression even if we could actually put a few more things in the car. But what we're saying is we put a lot of stuff in the car. And we can say that something is packed to the gills if it's not physically packed. So for instance, we could say, wow, that movie was really packed to the gills. It had a lot of great stuff in it, is what we're saying. A little later in the video, I said I set a limit with the girls that they could bring only one stuffed animal. To set a limit is to say, this is the limit. This is how much, no more than this. We can also say we set a boundary. I said in the video, we set a limit. This is a very common phrase. You might want to go back and see the whole sentence and practice how I said that in a way that makes sense in your life. I also used the phrase to escape the heat. A very common way to use this phrase is when we want to get away from the heat or get away from the snow. We might say, I'm going to escape the heat, or we're going to escape the snow. It's just a way of saying that we're tired of that, whatever it is, the heat, or in some states it's the snow, and we want to go and do something different. We're going to escape that thing. Speaking of weather, when I was trying to remember what 120 degrees Fahrenheit is, I said, I think it's about 38 or 48 or 49, and I checked it, it is about 48 or 49 degrees Celsius. But when you're not sure about something you're saying, you're pretty sure, but you're not sure, you might say something like I said, which was, don't quote me on that. In other words, it's almost the same as saying, I don't know that for sure. I'm pretty sure, but I don't know for sure. So don't quote me on that. In other words, don't say that I said that's exactly what it is. I said that I don't get to say everything that goes for Trinity. When we say I don't get to say everything that goes for something, it means I don't get to say what is going to happen. I'm not the person who has the control over this. I'm not the person who has the say over this. And that's why I said I don't get to say everything that goes for Trinity. As the parent of my own children, I can say what goes. For example, I can say what time bedtime is, or I can say what school they're going to. These are just examples. Are there any phrases or words that I didn't tell you about that you'd like to know about? Let me know in the comments. And one more phrase that I'd like to share with you is when I said, I kid you not. This is something I notice I use a lot. It basically means I'm not kidding. It means the same thing. It's another way of saying what I'm saying is literally true. I'm not exaggerating. This actually happened. I kid you not. So another way to get the most out of these video stories is to try to think of something you can remember that's similar. Maybe it isn't about you, maybe it's about your children or someone else in your family. Maybe it's something that happened recently or something that happened a long time ago. But if you can try to relate to something that I talked about in the story, and then practice using some of the phrases that you learned in this video to describe the time that you can think of in your own life. Don't worry about learning all of these phrases all at once. Pick one that you think would be particularly useful for you and practice it and then repeat it. Try to think of a time in your life when you can relate to something that uses this type of phrase, and this will help you to remember it and use it again in the future. Another way to remember what you've learned today is to tell your story or my story or both or parts of both to a friend or family member. Tell them about the video and tell them that you're learning English and you'd like to practice telling them the story in English. This way you get real world experience using these words and phrases. Let me know what you're going to do to remember what you've learned today in the comments below. And if this was helpful for you, be sure to give us a thumbs up. It really does help us. And subscribe so that you don't miss any more English lessons here with us at English Coach 3Ts. If you'd like to see a video where you can learn through a story similar to this one, check out this video. And if you'd like to see a video that features Trinity more recently, check out this one. I'll see you there.